On your anniversary, bring your wife here. She'll surely love it." That's what my mother said in my memory. I've carried them in my heart all these years. "Hey, Bobby, how's the concrete?" "Yeah, I'm on it." My name's Bobby, turning 35 this year. Been working in construction for a good while now. "Man, it's hot today." I took a moment, looking up at the sky. I met my wife, Kate, on a day just as hot. It's been a bit over 10 years since I met her as a newbie. Has it really been that long? Perhaps now's the perfect time to take her to that fancy diner I remember. The restaurant that I remember with my mother is a cherished place that will always be in my memory. When I was 10, my dad, whom I loved dearly, passed away from terminal cancer. His sudden absence hit me hard back then. "How about we go somewhere nice?" one day, Mom suggested and took me to a French restaurant. It had a solemn atmosphere with counter seats. "Mom, we're eating here." It was my first time in such a place, so I asked her, a bit nervously, "This is where your dad proposed to me." "Wow, so it's a special place for you and Dad." "Yes, honey. Today marks our 10th wedding anniversary, that's why we're here." She smiled warmly. Afterward, while eating the many delicious dishes that came out, I asked her about her memories of my father, and we talked about many things, which made me feel happy for the first time in a long time. "When you have your anniversaries, bring your future wife here. She'll surely appreciate it." On our way home, Mom shared those words. The mention of a future wife made me blush, but her words stuck with me, even as I grew up. Many years have passed since then, and before I realized it, we're celebrating our 10th wedding anniversary. I want to visit that place with my wife, Kate. Kate prefers Italian cuisine, but would she enjoy a French meal? No, I'm sure she'll be fine. No one could resist those dishes. "Hey, Bobby, quit daydreaming. You're slacking." "Sorry." I snapped back to reality and resumed my work. 10 years ago, while working just like this, Kate approached me. "Excuse me, are you the guy from back then?" she suddenly asked. "Huh, who are you?" "Oh, I'm sorry, I mistook you for someone else. You looked like someone I knew, but it's a memory from when I was little, so please don't mind it." "What do you mean?" "Well, actually, for some reason, I became curious and wanted to know more. It turns out the man was someone who had done a huge favor for Kate when she was younger. I called out to you because you looked so familiar," she said, looking embarrassed. This chance encounter led us to exchange contact info, and a few months later, we started dating and eventually got married. However, Kate never told me what exactly happened between her and that man back in the day. She said it was a precious memory and that she couldn't share the story. I was curious, but I figured it would be weird to press her about it now. She'll probably tell me someday. For now, I needed to focus on preparing for our anniversary. A fancy restaurant, is it really that good? It's amazing. My mom took me there once, and I haven't found a place that can compare. If your mother-in-law says it's good, I bet it's a fantastic place. I'm looking forward to it. So, you'll come with me. Of course, if you recommend it that highly. I'm excited. It's sure to give us wonderful memories. Seeing Kate's happy face filled me with anticipation. Truth be told, my mother passed away before Kate and I got married. But I'm sure she's celebrating our anniversary up in heaven. I couldn't help but smile, imagining her joyful face. On the day of our anniversary. "Hey Kate, I'm sorry. The meeting with the client ran late. It's okay, I'll wait for you here." I didn't have time to go back to the office after the meeting, so I rushed straight to the restaurant. I had planned to dress up in a nice suit for our special day, but it didn't work out. Upon arriving at the reserved restaurant, I approached the hostess. "Excuse me, I had a reservation under the name Bobby. Welcome, but the hostess, who had greeted him with a smile, furrowed her brows. Excuse me, but what are you wearing? Is there something wrong with what I'm wearing? Well, are you wearing work clothes? I was taken aback by her unexpected remark. Yes, it's my work attire, but it's for sales, not construction, so it's clean. Excuse me. The hostess looked even more displeased. Is there a problem? She looked shocked. Certainly, it's work attire, but not for construction work, so it's clean. I don't recall getting such a displeased look. Sorry, but we don't have any tables available today. The hostess, with a stern expression, glared at us and said that. Wait a minute, what's the deal? We made a reservation. Kate confronted the hostess. Our restaurant is fully booked with wealthy clientele. The hostess retorted with just that statement. A glance to the side and I could see Kate trembling with anger. Taking a deep breath to calm herself. If it's okay for us to take this to the Customer Advisory Center, then by all means, kick us out. Your restaurant's reputation will plummet, you know. At Kate's assertive remark, the hostess looked taken aback. I understand. I'll consult with the owner. Reluctantly, she said and disappeared towards the entrance. What's with this place? I'm sorry. It wasn't like this when I visited years ago. I get it. The management changed and so did the vibe of the place. I felt a pang in my heart at my wife's words. Indeed, the current diner is managed by the previous owner's son. Ever since he took over, I heard the reputation wasn't good. Hearing stories of them being picky with customers and having a bad attitude, I thought they were just rumors. But I can't believe how openly rude they are to customers. Lost in thought, the hostess returned. It was an oversight on our part. We sincerely apologize. Please allow me to show you to your table. Huh? You said earlier there were no reservations available. What's up with that? Kate snapped at the hostess, who responded with a raised eyebrow. You want our food, right? Our restaurant is always fully booked. Follow me to your table. The hostess said, rather coldly. It reminded me of a grumpy but skilled old sushi chef I saw on TV. Maybe this place has a similar vibe. Kate, let's just sit for now. Holding back the rising anger, we followed the hostess to the counter. The interior hasn't changed much since I was a kid. However, the chef behind the counter looked clearly displeased. With a scowl, he began placing dishes in front of us. The food looked delicious. Yet, it didn't stimulate my appetite. What's wrong? Not eating? Asked Kate. As I tasted the dish, it was certainly delicious, but there was a lingering odd sensation. What's this feeling? I thought as I continued eating. Suddenly, Kate spoke. How can you serve this to customers? Refrying beignet. What's with the hygiene standards of this place? What are you talking about? The chef's face contorted with irritation. Kate continued, glaring at him. The crispiness of the batter is clearly not fresh. It's been left out at room temperature for too long, right? It's lost its color and firm texture. At her observation, the chef's eyes widened. My wife, listening on the side, hasn't lost her sharp tongue, I thought, impressed. That's just your opinion. Where's your proof? Isn't it obvious just by looking at this dish? Well, it doesn't matter. I'll have our experienced journalists from our magazine come and secretly review your restaurant, and I'm sure they'll write an article that echoes my sentiments. An article? You can't be serious. Both the restaurant owner and the hostess turned pale in an instant. Little did they know, Kate was a food critic for a gourmet magazine. I came here today hoping to savor the nostalgic taste my husband always talked about, but both the service and the taste were a letdown. It's really disappointing, but I believe my husband is even more devastated than I am. Are you prepared for the backlash to your terrible service and food? With a cold stare at the restaurant staff, Kate put down her fork. "Let's go. I'll cover the bill. If we stay here any longer, our wedding anniversary will turn into a disaster." "I get it, but I brought you here. Let me pay." "In that case, I'll take you up on your offer." We still have some dishes coming out. We'll eat elsewhere, thank you." After saying that to the hostess, Kate got up from her seat. I also stood up and headed toward the cashier. "Wait, hold on. No need for change." I laid several $100 bills on the counter and left the restaurant. I wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. As soon as we were out, I apologized to Kate. "I'm sorry for making you go through that. More importantly, are you okay? Must have been a shock to see your mother-in-law's favorite place like that." "Oh, I have a place I want to take you." "A place you want to take me? You'll surely create good memories there." Then she guided me to a small diner located near the other restaurant, where I was greeted by a familiar face. "Welcome. Is that the guy from that time?" Though he had aged, there were traces of resemblance on his face. It was the gentleman who served us dishes when my mother and I visited that diner. In other words, the previous owner of that restaurant. Kate whispered in my ear. He handed over the main restaurant to his son and continued his business here. "Really, sir? The usual, please." "Gotcha, young lady. You want the salmon platter, right?" The former owner gave Kate a wide grin. "Young lady." I felt a sense of déjà vu hearing Kate being addressed that way. I had encountered a similar scene in the past. "Oh, that time. Did you finally remember?" Kate's voice was full of excitement. "I'm so glad you finally remembered. Turns out, there was more to the restaurant memory. At that place, while having a meal with my mother, a little girl was intently watching our food. She seemed to be alone, with no parents in sight. Wondering what was going on, I looked her way, and in a faint voice, she said, "Wow, that food looks so yummy." Apparently, she was dining in the only private room available with her father. However, they only ordered alcohol and snacks, so she was getting hungry. He only orders stuff like fries. Plus, he gets drunk and won't wake up, so I get really hungry. She spoke with tears just forming in her eyes, and I felt an urge to do something for her. "You okay? Hungry? You can eat this." I offered her my plate, and she responded, "Really? Are you sure? Thank you so much." She eagerly started eating the stew and terrine. Afterwards, the previous owner, who had observed the interaction, treated her to a complimentary meal. I clearly remembered her happily eating the food. Why had I forgotten about it? "No way, Kate. Was that you back then? I never forgot how kind you were to me. I recognized you right away when I saw you. That scar on your forehead, I could never forget." I had a large scar on my forehead from a bicycle accident when I was a kid. "I was so happy to see you again, but you never noticed me. I decided to stay quiet until you remembered. That's why I never mentioned it." Seeing Kate's innocent laughter made my heart warm. I can't believe I married that girl from back then. I never thought I'd marry the kind man from that day. The meal at that restaurant was honestly terrible, but let's make it up here. "Let's give you the best hospitality." The previous owner smiled warmly. "Yes, please," I replied with a smile. After that, we enjoyed a delicious meal just as I remembered. Maybe because of the earlier unpleasant experience, it felt even more delightful. Who would have thought that boy from back then would grow up so well? The head chef seemed to remember the incident well. It feels like a dream to be eating the chef's food together again. Kate joyfully ate the dishes prepared by the previous owner. It felt so good, like I had finally fulfilled what my mother always said. "Sorry for the unpleasant experience my sons caused you. My apologies." The chef bowed deeply. "It's not your fault. Please, don't worry about it." Raising his head, the previous owner continued. "Actually, I have a favor to ask. Ever since they took over the restaurant, they've become arrogant, even to regular customers. The reputation of the diner has plummeted. Can you help teach them a lesson?" "Is that really okay?" Kate asked, looking slightly pleased. "Yes, it's fine. I don't want the diner's reputation to get any worse. With your help, please do what you think is best." "Understood," Kate answered with a beaming smile. "I hope she doesn't go overboard." Seeing her smile gave me a bad feeling. A few weeks later, the diner received a scathing review in a gourmet magazine where Kate was in charge. Because of the prominent criticism, it seems the diner lost all its customers. Later, it seems the place was on the brink of shutting down but was acquired by someone else. Seeing a place with so many memories face such hardships is a bit bittersweet. I guess so, but the new owner seems to be a very nice person, and he is carrying on the taste of the original owner. I went there on business the other day, and the place looked so much better. It made me nostalgic. Nostalgic. It had the same vibe as the place where we first met. "Hey, in a few years, should we take our child there too? That sounds nice. But with a little one, we might be a bother. Maybe in about 10 years. I gently patted Kate's belly as I said this. Going to that restaurant might be a long way off, but the idea of taking our child to a place filled with so many cherished memories is something to look forward to. I wonder what kind of future we'll have built by then." With that thought, I gave a soft chuckle. I'm not a justice-minded person. Why did I help her when she was being harassed by thugs? I can't even understand it myself. I was in a hurry, with an important errand ahead of me. And yet, this beautiful girl looked up at me with those big eyes. "My name is Tom. I'm 28 and work at an advertising agency. Just your average Joe working a 9 to 5. If there's anything that sets me apart, it might be that I have no family to speak of. My mom had me without ever getting married. I know nothing about my father. Never even heard a peep about him from mom. For me, the absence of a father figure was just the norm. Apparently, my mom cut ties with her own parents before I was born. By the time I had any memories, I had no grandparents either. Raised single-handedly by my mom, she passed away just as I was about to graduate college. Sitting by her sick bed, I cried, telling her I wish I could have done more for you. She simply replied, "You didn't need to," before slipping into unconsciousness. And just like that, she was gone. It was a very her way to go. Whimsical, a tad selfish, and slightly eccentric, that was my mom. It wasn't until I entered the workforce that I realized I might have inherited her personality. The way people perceived me was eerily similar to the way I saw my mother. Makes me chuckle thinking, like mother, like son. But hey, I made it to 28 just fine. I'm sure mom's watching over me from wherever she is, feeling content. At work, folks think I lack oomph but agree I'd get the job done. I'm motivated, it just doesn't seem to come across that way. Some even think I'm holding back my true potential. Truth be told, I enjoy my work. There's a sense of accomplishment and a clear end in sight. The only slight complaint I have is about my immediate supervisor. His name is Kevin. He used to be in charge of training us newcomers. Now, he's our direct supervisor. Kevin has always had a bad reputation around the office. He rarely does any work but has a knack for making it seem like he does. It would be more accurate to say that he is smart. Basically, he's incredibly good at taking credit for others' achievements. On top of that, he's an expert at brown-nosing the higher-ups. The kind to climb the ladder by using his subordinates as stepping stones. I know it's different for everyone, but it does make me wonder about his character. Being entrusted with such a big project alongside Kevin really gives me a headache. It's a major contract and a large-scale project, with formidable competitors to boot. The CEO himself has said that we can't afford to lose this presentation. Kevin is the project leader. We're supposed to work as his hands and feet. I did all the work for the presentation's content and created all the documents. I believe that, together with the other staff, we've come up with the best we can. Kevin only gives us sarcasm and notices, but does nothing to help us. I even doubt he fully grasps the project's details. His main job seems to be giving a summarized progress report to the CEO. You could say that's pretty much all Kevin does for work. And of course, he reports it as if it's all his own achievement. Some staff members are getting sick of Kevin and losing their motivation. It also became my role to listen to their complaints. With the final presentation scheduled for the next day, I was feeling a bit nervous. Only Kevin and I are set to attend. I don't think Kevin even checked the presentation details. I'm thinking it's a presentation I'm going to have to work on alone. I doubt Kevin even looked through the presentation materials. I wish anyone but Kevin was accompanying me, but he's the project leader, so there's no helping it. I sincerely hoped he wouldn't get in my way. On the day of the presentation, I left my home earlier than usual. No matter what kind of accident might occur on the way, being late isn't an option. I decided to take a shortcut to the station to get to the presentation venue ahead of time. I don't usually go this way, but I passed through a park behind the station. It turned out to be a poor decision. Let me go. Looking in the direction of the voice, a high school girl was surrounded by a sketchy group. They were insisting on hanging out with the reluctant girl. I couldn't just walk by, so I shouted, "Hey, knock it off." All eyes from the sketchy group turned to me at once. They looked a bit older than the high school girl. They seemed like college students who were used to having their way. She's clearly not interested. They sneered at my words. The apparent leader of the group aggressively said, "Mind your own business." He didn't seem to want to back down. The high school girl looked up at me, clearly seeking help. Forcing her isn't manly. She doesn't want to hang out with you guys. Get it? At my words, they became menacing. I suddenly heard the sound of something cutting through the air. In the next instant, a sharp pain shot through my face. It wasn't until I hit the ground on my knees that I realized I'd been punched. Looking down at me, doubled over in pain, the gang laughed uproariously. My vision started to blur. Just when I thought, this isn't good, the gang's ringleader let out a scream. As my consciousness began to fade, the last thing I saw was a high school girl repeatedly kicking the leader where it hurts. Guess I wasn't the hero of this story after all. Listening to their screams, I slowly closed my eyes. While unconscious, I had a dream. I heroically saved the high school girl, and she thanked me. She hugged me, saying thank you, making me feel on top of the world. And on closer inspection, the girl in the dream looked a lot like my girlfriend from high school. Even though I knew it was a dream, I enjoyed the sensation of her embrace. Cut me some slack, it's just a dream after all. Hey, how long are you gonna sleep? A gentle hand brushed my cheek. Just when I thought, what a great dream, I opened my eyes to see the high school girl looking at me with concern. Seeing her face, the first words out of my mouth were "I'm sorry." She was far more beautiful than my high school girlfriend ever was. Jumping into a fight when you're clearly not a fighter, are you stupid or just too kind? She said with a mix of exasperation and amusement. Not exactly the thanks I was expecting. It kind of ticked me off. But thanks anyway, she said with a sweet smile. I was completely captivated by her smile. Whoa, and in the next instant, I shot up and checked my watch. I was over 30 minutes late for the presentation. Checking my phone, it was flooded with missed calls from Kevin and from the head office. Sorry, I gotta run. I grabbed my things and dashed towards the subway station. I could feel her eyes on my back, but I had bigger problems. Outside the client's building, I ran into Kevin. As soon as he saw my face, he swung at me. "This whole project is screwed because of you. What's your deal? Got into a fight and now you're late. Give me a break." He grabbed my collar and berated me. "I'm sorry. I got caught up in some trouble." Kevin, not having any of it, immediately called the CEO. He was reporting that the presentation had failed. And all because I was late. He plans to put all the blame on me. Of course, my being late is inexcusable. But Kevin is the project lead. Even if I wasn't there, it's expected he'd handle the presentation. There's no way Kevin, who hasn't even read the documents, can step in as a substitute presenter. He was probably bombarded with questions at the meeting. Seeing Kevin timidly report, I started to care less about what happens next. The thought of working under this guy for much longer paints a bleak future. By the time I was called into the CEO's office, my decision was already made. All the mistakes from this presentation lie on Tom. Ruining such an important presentation hurts me too. Seeing Kevin play the victim and rat me out to the CEO almost made me burst out laughing. The CEO just listened to Kevin silently. "Tom, any words in your defense?" "I'm sorry. I got caught up in a mess and was late for the crucial presentation. I'll take responsibility and resign." I could tell from the look of surprise on the CEO's face he wasn't expecting that. Making excuses won't change the outcome. I firmly placed my resignation letter on the desk. I didn't miss the smirk on Kevin's face. I bet he feels relieved with me gone. I was kind of really sick of it all. Everything no longer mattered. I didn't wait for the CEO's response. I just bowed and left his office. I quickly packed my personal belongings and left the workplace. As I was leaving, I looked up at the building of the company I had served for years and for some reason, thought of that high school girl. For the next 3 days after quitting, I just zoned out. I didn't even feel like going out until the swelling on my bruised face went down. The small photo of my mom in my room seemed to be smiling. She might be shaking her head at me from above. Or maybe she's laughing, thinking that's so like Tom. Either way, I needed a break. I kept reassuring myself of that. It was on that evening the CEO came to visit. I was eating some pasta when the doorbell rang. I was taken aback seeing the CEO at my doorstep. I had no idea why he would visit me. "I'd like to have a word. Is now a good time?" he asked in a calm tone, and I nodded. The room was a mess, but I managed to make some space for the CEO to sit. Meanwhile, he was staring at the small photo of my mom. Sir, please, have a seat here." There's only a cushion for him to sit on. I present a particularly flashy cushion to the CEO. But the CEO didn't move away from the mom's photo. Curiously, I look up at the CEO's face and am taken aback as if my breath was taken away. Without uttering a word, the CEO is just shedding tears. Seeing him quietly cry, I'm dumbstruck and forget to say anything. I have no idea how much time has passed. It turned out just as I thought. The CEO said, still captivated by the photo. To be precise, he's staring intently at a picture of my mom. "You know about my mom, don't you?" The CEO silently nods in response to my words. Seeing him cry this much in front of my mom's picture, I figured they must have been close. After the cancer was detected, it all happened so fast. It truly did. Maybe she was holding back from feeling sick. By the time I forcefully took her to the hospital, it was too late, and there was nothing I could do. Hearing about my mom's last moments, the CEO finally faced me. "I'm sorry for coming," and announced. "Your departure was so abrupt, it reminded me of her," the CEO said, looking once again at my mom's photo. "Excuse me if I'm mistaken, but don't you know my dad? If he knows so much about my mom, he must know about my dad too." That's what I thought when I asked the CEO. The CEO looks a bit troubled. I suspected he might know a secret related to my father. "Tom, would you be willing to take a DNA test?" With those words from the CEO, I understood everything. It made sense. I wanted to brush it off, but the words were stuck in my throat. She disappeared from my sight in an instant. As soon as my arranged date with my current wife was set, she vanished, and that was that. He must deeply regret that time. The CEO seemed to struggle to find the right words. My mom, considering the CEO's future, stepped back. "I've heard that the CEO's wife is the daughter of a senator." "Is that so?" "Sounds just like Mom. But sir, if she were still around, would you have chosen her?" "Oh, that's not the right way to ask. Could you have chosen her?" My sharp words made the CEO flinch. Thinking he was the only one hurt was a big mistake. As visiting me, suggesting a DNA test, felt almost like a betrayal to the family he has now. I don't have a family. I'm all alone in this world. That's why I understand the value of family. I thought the CEO should live to protect his current family, rather than dwelling on the past. "If you're seeking atonement," Mom would probably say, I began. "Huh? I don't need your pity." The CEO stared at me, probably seeing my mom and me. "Could you please leave? I'm not even your employee anymore." Pointing at the front door, the CEO seemed at a loss for words to say to me. He probably wasn't used to being outright rejected by someone. In the end, the CEO couldn't even say a word to me and just left through the front door. It was the first time I met my dad, but I didn't feel anything special. I'm not in for playing silly games. That night, my late mother appeared in my dreams after a long time. She was laughing so hard she was holding her stomach. It seemed she'd seen the way I sent the CEO packing. And she said, "Good job, son," praising me. Waking up with a tear of joy, I realized how fortunate I was to be her son. Mom and I are so much alike. The moment I got out of bed, there was a loud knock at the door that almost gave me a heart attack. Why would someone bang on the door when there's a doorbell? I cautiously approached the door to check. "Hey, I know you're there. Open up." I recognized that angry female voice from behind the door. It was the high school girl I met in the park. I opened the door fearfully. She looked like she was about to kick it in. "Dang, was just about to break it down," she said, lowering her foot that was raised to kick. I was trying to process why she was here. "I've got something to discuss, interim big bro," she said with a sly grin. I got the message and realized what she meant. Erwin, right. The CEO's daughter. She beamed and said, "Bingo," raising both her hands in a victory sign. Without waiting, she swiftly entered my apartment. She tossed her shoes from inside to the doorway. Such bad manners for a CEO's daughter. Sighing, I arranged the tossed shoes and looked back into the room. I saw her, with hands clasped in prayer, standing in front of my mom's photo. The long lashes around her tightly shut eyes trembled slightly. She must be nervous in her own way. "Did the CEO tell you about me?" "Nope. Found some documents my mom was looking into." She turned to face me and began talking. Her name was Olivia. Apparently, she was the only child born to the CEO and his wife. Sadly, after giving birth to Olivia, the wife was diagnosed with cancer and had a full hysterectomy. She's still tormented by the fact that she hasn't given him a son. She blames herself for not being able to produce an heir. At that time, the CEO found a photo of my mother he had kept hidden, and after hiring a private investigator, they traced back to me. Olivia said she sneakily saw the documents her mother had kept hidden. Seeing my picture, she was surprised. Turns out, the guy who helped her in the park by chance was her own brother. She felt it was destiny. "Thanks for that time," Olivia said, giving a little nod. "Apparently, Dad said to cherish the family, but Mom knew about you. It's your job to keep my seemingly falling apart family together." She then handed me the DNA test papers. The idea of me holding her family together is beyond bizarre. I've always wanted a brother since I'm an only child. Mom can't have any more children but wants a son, and Dad, wanting an heir, is waiting for you. Receiving the documents, I was unsure how to respond. It all seemed to revolve around Olivia's family's needs. What's in it for me? They come in, disrupt my quiet life. Don't they feel guilty? I thought it was a lousy negotiating technique. I guess my feelings showed on my face. Olivia smirked. "There's one benefit for you too." "What?" "It doesn't seem beneficial to me at all. You get a cute little sister like me." Olivia made a peace sign and laughed, showing it right in front of my eyes. "Isn't it great? Both of us not being alone anymore." "I see." Olivia seems to be a better negotiator than I thought. She presented a pretty tempting offer. Moreover, she looked confident. She seemed to not even consider the possibility of being turned down. This seems like the time to give in. "All right, I give up. I'll take the test." Before I could finish, Olivia jumped onto me. Holding her soft, warm body, I panicked. It's been so long since I've had such close contact with anyone. It's overwhelming. "Whoa. Hold on. I'm not confirmed as your brother yet. You'll get me caught." Trying to gently push Olivia away, she resisted, hugging tighter. In a very soft voice, she said, "Thank you. That CEO is one lucky man. Having such a thoughtful daughter. Plus, wanting a son too. Talk about luxury problems. But if it means I get a family, why not? If Olivia no longer has lonely nights by herself, then maybe my existence isn't in vain." From the DNA test, it's confirmed that the CEO and I are related by blood. When opening the results, I met Olivia's mother for the first time. She's the complete opposite of my mother. Elegant and gentle, the kind of woman who supports her man. She respectfully bowed to me, making me feel somewhat embarrassed. I thought she might dislike me, being another woman's son, but she welcomed me so warmly it was shocking. She even cried out of happiness for having a son, and I was at a loss for words. In the end, after the DNA results, it was decided that I'd return to work. I was appointed as the CEO's secretary. Essentially, I'm to support and learn about the CEO's work up close. I didn't want to live with him right away, so I'm still living alone in an apartment. Olivia frequently visits, sharing her troubles and complaints with me. Lately, she's been seeking advice about love. Who would have thought, a year ago, that I'd be giving love advice to my little sister? I've been guiding her, helping her with her love matters, so she can make the right choices. It feels rewarding when she confides in me, sharing troubles she can't discuss with our parents. However, there's one major issue. At this age, having such a cute sister has intensified my protective instincts towards her. I'm even having a hard time dealing with it myself. I reckon when Olivia gets married, both the CEO and I will be crying our eyes out. Family sure is something, I sighed with happiness. My mom is probably watching over me from the above, laughing. Thinking, serves you right. Such a luxurious problem to have. My name is Bob Johnson. This is a story from nearly 30 years ago. It was a cold night in late November, about a month after I was sent to a factory in a rural town in Nebraska. Though it was just past 6 o'clock, it was already dark outside. Back then, I lived on the second floor of an apartment that the auto repair company I worked for had rented. After finishing work that day, I hurried home, holding the takeout I had bought for dinner. When I turned off the main street and into a narrow lane, my apartment was just ahead. There was a restaurant at the corner, but it was located deep inside a narrow pathway that extended from the main street. The land was shaped like a flagpole. It's called a flag lot. So, the restaurant building itself was diagonally across from my apartment, separated by that lane. The lane was dark with only a few street lights, but the light shining out of the restaurant's large windows was almost blinding. Sorry for the long preamble, but in essence, that evening, as I turned the corner from the main street and passed by a restaurant, I happened to glance over and saw a young woman in her 20s inside the restaurant, puckering her lips and sticking them out toward the window, as if she was beckoning for a kiss from me. I felt like I'd seen something I shouldn't have and hurriedly ascended the external staircase to my apartment. Originally, the reason I had been transferred to a factory in Nebraska was due to a light-hearted prank by a colleague with whom I had worked in a repair shop in New York. I was on the brink of turning 30. Around that time, the car repair shop where I'd worked for nearly 10 years went bankrupt, and I got re-employed as a mechanic at a car repair company with several branches in the Northeast. Of course, the workshop I joined had senior colleagues, but there were also mischievous junior colleagues. "Hey Bob, can you take care of this? Finish up what you're working on first." The task the junior colleague handed over to me was a simple regular inspection of a passenger car. However, the owner of this car, a customer, was quite a character. He was the heir to a transportation company that was a major client of our shop, and he would bring his car in for a regular checkup every 6 months. But if his car wasn't given top priority, he'd get in a foul mood. To make matters worse, he would secretly check to make sure his car wasn't being neglected. Unaware of this, I, following the junior colleague's instruction, first finished repairing another customer's car. Seeing his car's inspection being postponed, the heir, who had been watching from the shadows, lodged a complaint with the factory manager. "Did you guys properly explain it to Bob? We told him it's top priority." The junior colleague chuckled. The factory manager seemed to understand that I hadn't been properly informed. But the heir threatened to get his father involved and end all business with us unless I was fired. "Bob, given the situation, I hate to ask this, but could you go to our Nebraska branch until things cool down?" Not wanting to lose another job, I agreed to go to Nebraska. The factory manager said I'd be there until things cooled down, which meant for a year. In other words, it was a promise to bring me back to New York after a year. However, once I arrived at the rural Nebraska workshop, I quickly took a liking to the relaxed pace, quite different from New York. Throughout the workday, the local AM radio would play. Casually listening to the radio while working. From 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. on weekdays, there was a laid-back program called Hello Nebraska that didn't seem special at all. But I got hooked on it. Every Wednesday, a female reporter on her rounds and the main male announcer would engage in banter that tickled my funny bone. "Hey, Catherine, where are you reporting from today?" "Hi, it's reporter Catherine. Today, I'm at the SC visiting the Arnada Park." "Wait, what? SC, what's that?" "That means the southern part of the county." "Well, then say South County properly." I thought I did. "Geez, you didn't. So, where's this Arnada Park? Sounds nice, I guess." "Yes, I'm definitely at Arnada Park. Why do you stretch out the E? It's in a daw. The male radio host would become particularly sharp-tinged, almost bursting with sarcasm, only when he interacted with her. It wasn't that he was genuinely mad, he seemed to be holding back laughter. And Catherine, the budding reporter, would earnestly and seriously respond, which for some reason I found hilarious and became addicted to. Anyway, about the girl from the restaurant across from my apartment. It soon became clear that she wasn't trying to beckon for a kiss from a passing stranger like me. Because, ever since that day, out of curiosity, I'd occasionally lean out from my apartment window to observe her. From my observations, I realized that she seemed to be a restaurant employee, and during slow hours or while waiting for customers, she would make funny faces towards the window, pulling up the corners of her mouth, opening her mouth wide, or puckering her lips. My head was full of questions. Living a boring life in the countryside, my curiosity piqued, and on the next payday, I decided to visit that restaurant I had been avoiding because it seemed a bit pricey. The inside of the restaurant wasn't as formal as I'd expected. It had a modern design and a touch of luxury, but the atmosphere was casual. I ordered a hamburger dinner set. For me, quantity matters more than taste in a regular meal. I was satisfied as long as my stomach was full. Even with that, the hamburger here stood out as exceptionally delicious. And the portion size was pretty generous. But $30 is a bit steep, a treat for myself on payday. I wasn't the only one who thought so. Seems like most folks decide to splurge on payday. The restaurant had a steady stream of customers. Thankfully, she looked so busy that she probably didn't have time to make any funny faces. Speaking of which, I noticed something as soon as I entered the restaurant. There was a large window that extended from the ceiling to about waist height of a standing person, and the lace curtains hanging there were tied back in the middle, leaving it open. At night, with the darkness outside and the reflection of the restaurant's lights on the window, it created a two-way mirror effect. This meant that the girl making funny faces was looking at a reflection in this two-way mirror. Maybe she was practicing for some kind of year-end party performance. That's what I thought at the time. Hey, everyone, can y'all take a moment and listen up? Manager Smith, with his usual laid-back voice, called out to us who were working. So, this coming Wednesday, Manager Smith pointed to a speaker on the wall that was playing a radio broadcast and mentioned that a radio show would be visiting our factory for a segment. You mean, like Hello Nebraska? Ding, ding, ding. Manager Smith mentioned that he would be interviewed, but some of us might be as well, so we should be prepared. Wednesday, which means the reporter would be Catherine, whom I'm a big fan of. And when I saw Catherine's face during the segment, I almost fainted. She was the same waitress making those funny faces. Suddenly, a piercing feedback noise echoed throughout the factory. Right after the Hello Nebraska crew arrived, someone had left the factory radio on, causing feedback. Manager Smith rushed to turn off the radio and profusely apologized to reporter Catherine and the crew. Next up, sir, over here. She turned the microphone to me. Your name? Bob. Roderick. Huh? Have you been working here long? With a pounding heart, I answered her questions. I couldn't remember what she asked or how I responded at the time. That night, I went back to my apartment and replayed the radio segment I had recorded earlier in the day. Well, thank you all, especially Mr. Smurf. That's all from us here. It was not a big deal for me to be called Roderick instead of Bob. But Mr. Smith ended up being called Mr. Smurf. The recording even included some post-interview studio chatter, where a male host said, calling Mr. Smith a Smurf was a bit rude, don't you think? Since then, I'd occasionally peek into the restaurant from a side street or my apartment window. And I realized something. Oh, she makes those faces at the two-way mirror when there aren't many customers, meaning it's a quiet time at the restaurant. Next time, I thought I'd try to time my visit for one of these quiet moments. Maybe then, I'd get a chance to chat with her for a bit. Before all this, I mostly just frequented the local convenience store. However, on my days off, I started doing bulk shopping at supermarkets and cut down on my impulse spending at convenience stores to save money. There's this restaurant that's a bit pricey, but she works there, and I wanted to visit. And then, the day before my next payday, I had decided to have dinner at that restaurant. Learning from my past experience, I decided to go the day before payday, not on the payday. Just to be sure, I checked the windows of the restaurant from the outside, which had turned into a one-way mirror. And I could see her making a funny face. When I entered the restaurant, just as I thought, I was the first customer of the night. Noticing a customer, she swiftly turned her body from the window to face inside. She guided me to a table for 4. I'm alone, is that okay? Yes, I don't think it will be that crowded tonight. I glanced over the menu, but I had already decided on the hamburger dinner set from the get-go. Returning the menu, I looked up at her, and she stared back at me intently. Excuse me, haven't we met somewhere before? Not at this restaurant. Yes, once at the auto repair shop you visited for a radio interview. Oh, you're that guy, she said, furrowing her brows, trying to recall. Was it Bob? Yes, Bob, right. Yes, it's Bob, not Roderick. She made a playful, gully face and stuck out her tongue. Realizing she had forgotten to take the order, she quickly headed towards the kitchen. New order, burger set, 1. After that, she whispered something to a dignified, older gentleman standing on the floor. The gentleman nodded in agreement, took a quick glance at me, and gave her another nod of approval. After she bowed to him, she returned to my table. I asked for permission to chat with you until your food is ready. Who's he? He's the owner. She then asked apologetically if she had mistakenly called me Roderick during the interview. I replied yes and jokingly mentioned that she called Mr. Smith Mr. Smurf. Hearing that, she laughed and shared how she got scolded in the studio for getting names wrong. Usually, I'm fine. I can say Bob correctly and even Manager Smith properly. But when I hold a microphone, I just mess up. She lamented, it's bad for a radio announcer. But I like listening to you, I said. She looked surprised, and I quickly tried to clarify. I mean, you have a unique style which makes the radio fun to listen to. Just then, a voice from the kitchen announced my hamburger was ready. She excused herself to get my meal. I sneakily glanced at the restaurant window. The one-way mirror was showing a clear reflection of me. When she brought the food, she said, "Sorry for the unnecessary chit-chat," and was about to leave my table when I stopped her. Just one more thing. She stopped and looked at me. "Catherine, do you often make funny faces at that window?" She looked genuinely shocked and covered her face with her hands. "Could you see me?" "Yes, when it gets dark outside, that window becomes like a one-way mirror. From inside, it's like a regular mirror, but from outside, you can see everything inside the restaurant." She let out a big sigh, looking a little embarrassed. Then, as a demonstration, she made a funny face at me. I chuckled, saying, "Oh yeah, exactly that, exactly." It's like a pronunciation exercise. I wanted to improve my speech clarity. I do it in front of the window, looking at my reflection, whenever I have free time. She bowed her head towards me, saying she won't do it anymore. She added, "Please have it while it's still warm," as she began to move away from my table. Without thinking, I called out to her. "It's perfectly fine. Having unique speech, it's like your own charm. I'm a fan, really, especially of your." She turned around, giving me a long, searching look. That night, I got carried away and talked endlessly with her, but afterwards, I felt embarrassed and decided not to visit that restaurant again. About a year after I arrived in Nebraska, shortly before I was set to return to New York, I decided to see her one last time at that restaurant. The place was almost empty that night. The gentlemanly owner seated me. Immediately after sitting, I looked around the restaurant, but she was nowhere to be seen. "It's been a while since your last visit. Thank you for coming back." I was surprised that he remembered me. For a moment, I wondered if he was mistaking me for someone else. "I felt terrible thinking our waitress might have bothered you with her long stories," he added. I quickly waved my hands in front of my face, denying it. Worried that he might have fired her because of a misunderstanding, I asked, "Is the waitress from that time off today?" He shook his head and said, "You know she works as a radio reporter, right?" I said yes, and mentioning that I still listened to her segment every Wednesday. Then, the owner told me about her. She couldn't make ends meet with just her weekly radio job, so she had been working part-time at this restaurant. However, about 3 months ago, she was scouted by a radio station in New York who found her intriguing. Now, she has quit her part-time job at this restaurant and moved to New York. In a radio station in New York, she appears in a late-night show as a comedian's assistant. She still appears in the program Good Morning Nebraska out of respect, as it was the show that nurtured her. I told her I'd be transferring to New York soon myself. So, this would be my last dinner at this place. Well, sorry for the long chat. Would you like the hamburger dinner set? The owner remembered my favorite dish. Even in Nebraska, you could listen to radio shows in New York. I quickly tuned into the late-night show where she was an assistant. "Catherine, you really need to work on your pronunciation." She was playfully teased on the show as well. "It's fine, really. There are a fan who likes me just the way I am." Who in the world would that be? A man named Roderick. He's not silly. He's a wonderful person. Oh, what's this? A love confession on air. Half a month later, I returned to New York. Not much had changed at my workplace, the repair factory, from a year ago. The only difference was that the young heir of the transportation company, who was the reason I was sent to Nebraska, had been reprimanded by his father and had calmed down. On the night before my first day off after returning to the New York factory, I spent some cash to buy a big bouquet and waited for her outside the radio station in Central Park after her late-night show. "Isn't that Bob? Why are you here?" She saw me and ran towards me, and I embraced her tightly. It was one of the few romances I had ever experienced. A story from a long time ago, over 30 years ago. In life, you never know what's going to happen. Sure, some things might seem unfair, but not all of them are bad. I once thought I'd never see a woman again after our first meeting, but then we ran into each other in the most unexpected place. Was it a miracle or fate? Never in a million years did I think our futures would turn out this way. My name is Jake, 30 years old. I work in the product planning department at the headquarters of a food company. I thought it'd be fun if something I came up with could benefit someone or make them excited. That's why I wanted to get into planning, and I found this job. They were hiring fresh out of college, looking for some young blood. Most of my work involves analyzing and collecting data, mostly under the guidance of my seniors. But I always hoped that one day it'd be my turn. Try drafting a proposal. I still remember the thrill when I was given that chance and the joy I felt when even a small project was approved. At 28, I took a big risk and made a proposal for a new project. It got approved and was a huge success. I even won the President's Award. Getting here wasn't easy, but I felt things had been going smoothly. Before I knew it, I hit 30. My parents were getting worried, always asking, "All you do is work. What about settling down?" Both of my parents got married when they were 22. My brother tied the knot at 24. So, they were probably concerned seeing me still single at 30. I know someone who's looking for a match. My mom suggested an arranged date. The idea didn't excite me, but my mom said, "It's not as formal as you think. Why not give it a shot?" Apparently, she had already shown that person my picture. I was annoyed she did that without asking, but she said the response was positive. The woman's name is Catherine. She's 28 and works as a nurse. "I'll send you her picture, take a look." My mom, sounding quite excited, hung up the phone without waiting for my response. Soon after, a picture and a message were sent to my cell phone. She's the one in the middle. It looked like a fun pic with her colleagues. She had her hair neatly tied up, and her smile was radiant. My phone buzzed again, a message from my mom. "Jake, she's totally your type, right?" My brother had seen the photo too and thought Catherine was right up my alley. That's my brother. He hit the nail on the head, and I couldn't help but laugh out loud reading my mom's message. To be honest, I've been so consumed with work since starting my job that I haven't been dating. Now, I'm not even sure how to go about finding someone. I do think about getting married someday. I felt like maybe it wouldn't hurt to just meet up once. It seems the lady in question, Catherine, isn't keen on a formal arranged date either. The idea was for the two of us to meet up and maybe grab dinner. We decided to have a date, but just the two of us without any matchmakers. We exchanged contact information and set a date. It turned out both of us were free the following Saturday. I was looking forward to the day we'd meet. However, on the day before the date, an unexpected situation arose. "You've got a transfer order." Called into the manager's office, I took the order and my eyes widened. "Is this?" I was at a loss for words. The sudden transfer was shocking enough, but to top it off, the new location was in what could be described as a rural branch office in another state. I have heard that the department has a small number of employees and is just a task-oriented department. Within the company, it had a certain reputation as where the sidelined employees ended up. Seeing my shock, the manager said, "It's perfect for you. You can speak your mind and work as you like." Apparently, he had recommended me for this transfer. While HR and the higher-ups were skeptical, the manager was convinced that I'd bring fresh energy and boost business, or so he claimed. Whether it was true or not, I heard the CEO had high hopes for my transfer too. "You're lucky," the manager said with a smirk. Why did this happen? That's when it hit me after hearing the words, "You can speak your mind and work however you want." Ever since I won an award within the company, the manager's attitude towards me changed drastically. "Hey, Jake, where's that report I asked for?" Looking back, that was the beginning. "Which one are you referring to?" "You know, the one I asked for a week ago," he retorted, his brows furrowing with frustration. But I had no recollection of him asking, and it was rare for him to make direct requests. Without any specifics, he publicly reprimanded me. "Don't get ahead of yourself, all right. I don't know why the director lied about asking me to do it, but he just lectured me and left." There were no urgent follow-up instructions either. I figured he must have been mistaken. However, from then on, he became more confrontational, often making snide remarks. That's when it hit me. A while back, there was a project that the manager pushed through based on his whims. Most of its content was his brainchild. However, it resembled a proposal that had been rejected in the past. Other companies had tried something similar and failed, and it wasn't in line with current market needs. While many disagreed, no one dared to oppose the manager. I, however, offered him some advice. It seems he didn't take kindly to it. That's probably why he targeted me. I regretted speaking up, but continued to work diligently while trying to avoid upsetting him. Seems it didn't work. And as a result, I got what felt like a demotion. You're moving in 2 weeks. Make sure you hand everything over properly. With that, the manager walked away with a spring in his step. Now, with this transfer looming, the arranged date was the last thing on my mind. The new location was out of state and seemed like a dead end for my career. I thought I should call off the date before things got serious. However, I had already made a reservation at the restaurant. Canceling last minute didn't feel right. And telling Catherine over the phone seemed too rude. I decided to meet her in person and apologize. The next day, I met Catherine in front of the restaurant. Seeing her warm smile made my heart heavy. We entered the private room I had reserved for the occasion. Immediately after sitting down, I said, "Hey." I informed Catherine that I received a transfer order yesterday, that the new destination is far away, out of state, and I was assigned to a lesser-known department. It's a role with no potential for growth, and I had no idea what the future would hold. I couldn't possibly ask her to be okay with this. I also apologized for the inconvenience of meeting under these circumstances today. You could have just called, but you took the trouble to tell me in person. I appreciate it, but since we're here, how about having lunch together? I was prepared for her to be upset, but instead, Catherine gave me a warm smile. We enjoyed a delicious meal, and she shared stories about her work, how she had been too busy to meet anyone, and how a mutual acquaintance had introduced her to me. Turns out, our passion for our jobs was something we both had in common. The conversation flowed naturally, and time flew by. It was bittersweet when it came time to leave the restaurant. As I was leaving, I thanked her for the wonderful time and apologized once again for declining the previous arrangement. I then called my mom to update her. When I told her about my decision based on the transfer, she sounded disappointed but understood. I had some issues with the transfer, including issues with my boss. I considered quitting, thinking it might be better than transferring to the remote branch. But I decided to give it a shot, and if things didn't pan out, I could always leave. I decided to do my best at the new location. And then a year went by. The rural branch, rumored to be monotonous. Indeed, it was less exciting than when I was in the product planning department at the main office. Due to cost cutting, there were fewer staff, and we had to do tasks that would typically be handled by other teams at the main office. The workload was intense, and it felt like all of us were working like mules. Working overtime nonstop, I've been guzzling energy drinks just to keep going. It's been really tough on my body. And then, on a scorching summer day, as I was heading to the bus terminal, I suddenly felt unwell. I tried to sit on a bench but felt dizzy. I collapsed. I was suffering from mild heat stroke at this time. An elderly man nearby shouted, "Are you okay?" But all I could do was nod weakly. Then, I heard a familiar female voice ask, "Are you all right?" Unable to open my eyes, I just groaned. "Can you stand up? Sorry, let's get you to that bench over there." I felt hands supporting me, taking me to a shaded area. I don't know how many people helped me. They bought me water, fanned me, and took care of me. The woman who had spoken to me checked my pulse and felt my forehead to check my temperature. After some hydration and cooling down, I began to feel better. Once I felt a bit clearer, I thanked everyone, and they left. The helpful woman stayed till the end. "I'm glad you're looking better. Please go home and rest." I thanked her once more. "Thank you so much for your help." I looked up and met her eyes, and exclaimed, "Wait." She smiled. "I thought so. It's you, Jake, right?" It was Catherine. She had not recognized me initially, but noticed the resemblance once I began to recover. I hadn't been able to see her face clearly, and only realized now. "But why are you here, Catherine?" She mentioned she was on a solo trip, taking a break. "It's surprising you recognized me from just one meeting." We laughed about it. Seeing that I was feeling better, Catherine looked relieved. I wanted to thank her properly, but decided to rest for the day. She mentioned she'd be in a nearby hotel the next day. We agreed to meet up the next Saturday. And the next day, I called my office right after and took a proper day off, and my body recovered. I let Catherine know that I was feeling better. While eating at a recommended upscale restaurant, I asked Catherine why she was traveling alone. Catherine wanted to be healed by nature while taking in the sights of various regions. But I could sense a hint of sadness in her expression. I'd get pretty worn out, so I took some time off on a whim. Catherine said that, though her smile looked forced. "How about you, Jake?" She shifted the topic to me, and I shared my recent happenings. I talked about my less satisfying job compared to before, and vented a bit. I realized how much I loved the projects I used to work on. I'm not quite content with my current environment. When I first transferred here, I was determined to return to the main office and make a mark, but lately, I've been thinking that maybe trying something different might not be a bad idea. Hearing that, Catherine mused, "Maybe I should come over here. The air is fresh, and it's comforting." She looked distant. Her expression was still somewhat downcast. "What happened?" I asked out of concern. It turned out that her solo journey wasn't just for vacation. Catherine is a nurse at a major hospital. She works in a hospital ward and has a large number of patients that one person handles. While she's proud of her nursing career, she feels she's been too emotionally involved with each patient, which has drained her spirit. She started to wonder if nursing might not be the right career for her. She thought she had overcome such feelings a long time ago, but now they're resurfacing. She's contemplating quitting her nursing job. Not all of them are discharged from the hospital in good health. It might be even tougher than I imagine. Though it's not my place to say, I offered, "Maybe you need a break. Taking some time off can be necessary." It felt like I was talking more to myself than to Catherine. "Maybe I should quit too," I exclaimed with a stretch and a grin. For some reason, I blurted out something completely unexpected. "If you're up for it, why don't we travel together?" What was I thinking? But it wasn't a lie. What was it? I had this vague feeling that things might be better if Catherine and I were together. Catherine looked surprised but then bashfully nodded. "If you're okay with me." "Daddy." "Oh, Michael, what's up today?" I crouched down to lift my energetically running son. The clinic was only half day today, so I picked up Michael from daycare. Today is a community event day at the coastal town center. There are stalls selling fresh seafood, grilled fresh fish, and booths with toys and food that children love. I'm here today as an employee of the company organizing this event. Since my reunion with Catherine, I'd casually mentioned traveling together. It became a reality. We both thought it was just a spur of the moment. I quit my job, and Catherine quit nursing. Since both of us had been working so much, we hadn't spent much. We had plenty saved up for our journey. We traveled around the US on a whim. While I knew I wanted to start something new and loved planning, I wasn't clear about what else I was interested in, or whether I wanted to work in the food industry again. Catherine thought that taking a break might give her a new perspective. The reason she agreed to my wild idea was she hoped the trip would offer some clarity. One of the places we visited is the coastal town we now call home. The scent of the sea was ever present, and every meal we had was delicious. Moreover, Throughout our stay, the warmth of the townsfolk was truly comforting. Catherine felt the same way. After our journey, we both considered settling down here. To settle down, we needed to find a job. I wanted to work in planning, so I checked a job listing website and saw that the event company I was working for was hiring. Based on my past work, whether it was in food or miscellaneous goods, I had been thinking narrowly, but I immediately thought, this is it, for someone else. To bring excitement. My core reasons for wanting to work in planning hadn't changed. The event company's website made my heart race even more. That's how I ended up joining the event company. And Catherine, she found work at a clinic. Catherine, who took the time to reflect on herself during our travels. She remembered when she aspired to be a nurse. If she could support someone, even just a little. She realized her pride in nursing and her feelings hadn't changed. During our travels, there were several instances where Catherine assisted sick people. Perhaps it's a nurse's intuition. Not that they were collapsed or huddled, but by observing their movements and complexion, Catherine would approach and ask, "Are you okay?" With swift actions, she'd calm them down, or make them feel a bit better, just like she did for me. I often think nursing is her true calling. I believe Catherine realized that too. Without hesitation, Catherine searched for a nursing job. And she found her current clinic. The clinic is closely connected to the local community. She said she hoped to support the folks in our beloved town. Our trip with Catherine, though spontaneous, never felt out of place. Being with her felt natural, or rather, there was an overwhelming sense of excitement. Our bond quickly grew closer. After living in this town for a while, with the thought, if it's with Catherine in mind, I made a heartfelt confession, almost like a proposal, asking, "Would you stay with me from now on?" To my joy, Catherine felt the same way. We dated for about a year, and then we got married. And then our son, Michael, was born. By the way, my family wasn't surprised when Catherine and I got married. They had anticipated this from the time we started our trip. Especially my mom and older brother, they still claim they played Cupid. Catherine's family is also supportive, happy to see her smiling, even though we're living far away. Had I not met Catherine, I might not have taken such a bold step. Looking back, that unexpected job transfer might have been a turning point leading to this happy future. Far from being a demotion, I think of it as a promotion. But the courage I had at that time is still a mystery to me. What was that about? It was strange, right? Catherine and I often reminisce and laugh about it. Maybe it was a mix of a miracle and destiny. While cherishing these happy moments, I hope we can keep smiling in this town we love so much.